Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks. Today, the Hungry Gamer is back with another interview, and today I am joined by Peter Vaughn, co-founder of Cardboard Alchemy and formerly of Breaking Games, and he's here to talk to us a little bit today about his journey from Breaking Games with, right at the end of his time there, a very big success into starting his own board game publishing company called Cardboard Alchemy, which has also recently had a pretty darn successful Kickstarter to get started. So, Peter, thank you for joining us. And just to jump in, how did you get yourself into the board game industry in the sense of it actually being your job? How did that happen?
Oh, that's a good question. Thanks, and appreciate the interview. I've been playing games my whole life, so Commodore 64, Amiga, gaming all the time, right? I had a poker group where I built my own table and I was playing poker with these guys, and I said I want to make video games or board games, and they were tired of hearing it from me. They were like, you know what? Just shut up already and make a game. I challenge you. This guy a good friend of mine, he wanted to write a screenplay, and I kept saying I wanted to make a game, and he said, "I'll tell you what, we'll make a challenge. I will write a screenplay. You will make a game. We will actually do the thing."
And that man's name is Quentin Tarantino.
That's hilarious. My first game went on Facebook in 2011. It was a choose your own adventure horror game that was at the same time as Farmville, and I was thinking to myself, I had been playing the Wizards of the Coast had these choose your own adventure where you could pick to be a class in D&D and then go on this little adventure, but they were sadly lame, and I thought I could do better than these games. But we did not conquer Farmville, and so that game was off the market pretty soon. Although I reprogrammed it for the Amazon Kindle, and then I was all set to make my next game, which was on iOS, and that is when. So I'm a longtime board gamer, and someone was talking to me about how we should test the iOS game in board game form. This was a card game, and they said, "Wow, why don't we do that?" And I said, "Well, I love playing board games, sure." So I built out the game in cards first. And as we were sitting around the table, people said, "I think I like this better than the app. I think I like the trash talk and the take that and all the things that this game has. I like it better at the table." So I actually launched my first game on Kickstarter in 2013 for my company, Squirmy Beast, which I still own that company. That is the company that then started making games and partnered with Breaking Games as a co-publisher on Letter Tycoon, a co-publisher on Boomtown Bandits, and eventually Breaking Games said, "Would you like to develop all of our titles?" And that was too good to pass up, right? That was an amazing chance. They then told me that they wanted to make 60 games a year, and I thought, well, that's a lot more than I've been making before. But we did pretty well. I think I averaged around 12 a year. So,
And just for anybody who's just out there looking, well, what was that first game that you published back with Squirmy?
oh, my very first one was called What the Food, which is a cafeteria food fight to the death,
Ooh, to death.
or to the humiliation, as it were. Because at the time I was playing Bang a lot, and I looked at Bang as a great game at lunchtime. But sometimes Bang went an hour, 2 hours, and it shouldn't go that long. And I was trying to figure out how to solve that. And I actually looked at Munchkin, and I came up with a game that the ending is determined by when someone reaches the goal, as opposed to not. So you don't knock anyone out, but when someone gets to the end, everyone scores. Like you want a golf score, so you want the lowest score in that game.
Well, how long were you at Breaking Games?
I developed for them for 4 years.
4 years. And so sometime during that, and for those of us who are not behind the scenes, at the end of your time at Breaking Games, Dwellings of Eldervale hit, which was what was it, almost $2 million on Kickstarter? Is that accurate?
No, it was 500,000, but it still was awesome. And we
Oh,
did
only
half,
wow.
we did another 500,000 in the backer kit with all the support. So it was great.
Okay. Well, so I'm just making up numbers, but nonetheless, that is a huge amount. And even though the designer is Luke Laurie, you had a big hand in bringing that game to Breaking Games, bringing the game to Luke in some ways. And do you mind talking a little bit about that and how
Oh,
that
sure.
happened?
Absolutely, because that's the kind of game I've always wanted to play. I'm a big fan of engine builders. I'm a big fan of Euro style mechanics, and I had been playing a lot of Puerto Rico. I felt like there wasn't a fantasy Puerto Rico. There wasn't a I want, instead of farming, I want dragons, right? So Luke and I were driving home from a convention, and Luke's an amazing worker placement designer. He asked me what games were kicking around in my head. I told him all the ideas, including Dwellings. He then told me that all my ideas sucked. He said, "These are all terrible." And then the next day, he called me and he said, "I can't stop thinking about this one, right? This game is not getting out of my head." And I was like, "See what I tell you?" I wanted 8 elements because I had played a video game called Lords of Magic, and they had slivers of each land had different elements to it, like pie wedges. And there was air and earth and fire and water and order and chaos. And I mean, I'm a big fan of variable player powers as well. So I wanted it to be that if you played dwarves, it felt different than if you played demons. And I wanted all that stuff in there. So we started a Google Doc that year. That was like 7 years ago that we started this doc, and we said, we're going to make this game. And I was theme guy. I was like inspiration, for what I want. I wanted Gandalf versus a Balrog in there, and Luke was going to get this to be the most solid worker placement game. And he had to do a lot of things he took those 8 elements, which he's like, you cannot have 8 resource types in a worker placement game and have it function. But he's like, but I have an idea of how to do that where we're gonna fix that. And some people will think that Dwellings is like the kitchen sink, but there was even more sink. There was even more kitchen. I wanted storytelling in there. I wanted it so that if you played the dwarves for a long time, like the gold would be up and then the gold would run out because they had mined it all. I wanted like all these things in there. None of those worked. We spent years on it. We started before I was at Breaking Games, but then while I was at Breaking Games, he comes to me and he goes, I cracked it. I got the thing. I figured it out. And I played it, and it was the magic that everyone who's played it right now has seen. It
Yeah.
is. It was.
And the just to jump in the middle, one of the things, and I shared this with you the other day, is one of the interesting things about this game to me is when I first played it at DungerCon, yeah, DungerCon a few years ago.
Mhm.
It was towards the beginning of when I'd been playing worker placement games. I came into the hobby more of the dungeon crawl, those kind of games,
Sure.
and I thought, okay, that was fun, that
Yeah.
was fine. And then when I've come back to it, since I've been playing a lot more Euro games and a lot more worker placement games, is something in there. I don't know if it's from the theme or the elements or whatever it is. There's something about it that takes the worker placement mechanic and it twists it just enough with the way you build your houses and the way that there is never a wasted action. Even
Hmm.
though when you're pulling back, you're building up a tableau of cards with all these other actions on it. So there's never a wasted action. But if you have not played a lot of worker placement games, a lot of Euro games, you don't realize how that is special and how that is unique. And then
Sure.
when I started so then having all this experience with all these other games, I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool. And to me, that's interesting that somehow over now I know 7 years, you guys took something that must have been created something that must have been completely unknown 7 years ago. Because I don't know what the first worker placement game to let you use your workers coming back to do something was. I have no idea, but it certainly could not have been common back then. And so,
It might have
how did you
been.
guys come up with that? Because
Well,
that's
okay, so
crazy talk.
that part right there, that core right there, that's Luke studying worker placement for a long time. And he made Manhattan Project Energy Empire, which was the first time that I saw when you come back out of that game, you get to activate well, 2 things. Energy Empire allows you to use energy and workers, which is a nuance that's a little neat because the workers are a set pool that you have to go out there and specifically go get more. But energy is different. You can generate as much energy as you want depending on what energy sources you're running. So he had 2 ways to activate. And then secondly, that pullback turn was always exciting because when you activate a commerce building, you get to fire all your commerce buildings. And the chain reaction in Energy Empire feels as it has that dopamine feel of Terraforming Mars, where you get to play a big, big engine. Like you get to see it. So when Luke and I were partnering up, we worked on a blog called League of Game Makers. And I remember he studied a lot of worker placement. He studied like, the classic Stone Age. And he would often talk about what is not being done in worker placement. And that actually got him noticed by, because he sort of became like, not the expert of it, but he was talking about it all the time. And then that got him noticed by James Matthey, who was the publisher at the time for Manhattan Project. And I think from there, it's been Luke was making party games and some other games, but what he realized is these are the ones I just destroy at these. All right, he's really good at that. The other thing about Dwellings is, we used to post on the league like all these different ideas for worker placement, and another one was unique workers that are not the same. And in Dwellings, you have a wizard and you have a dragon, and those do not act the same. Which is it's subtle, but it is in there too, right? So you have this really efficient turn, which Luke put in there, and then we have these really unique workers, which is this asymmetry that goes beyond just your player faction asymmetry, right? It's now like what worker is doing the placement. It feels interesting that way too.
So I interrupted the full story. So
Yeah,
you have this idea. Luke, as I can only imagine, calls you at 3 a.m. screaming, "I got it! I got it!" Um, and somehow you get this on the docket at Breaking Games, and it
right.
becomes a pretty darn big hit. So, how did that pitch go? Was that an easy thing, or was that you had to fight for it?
That's a good question, and I actually would put Dwellings as not the usual Breaking Games fare, right? So when I started Breaking Games, Sherry Spiro is the CEO. She's great. She was the one who gave me the opportunity, and she's very interested in a lot of games. She's an omnivore, so they make party games. That's one of their bread and butter, right? They make family games. They help publish Letter Tycoon, which I co-published, and Game of 49. So they have these family games. They have a market at Target and Walmart. And then we were at cons like Gen Con, and I said, we don't have any strategy. We need to make the strategy division. The very first year that I signed on, Breaking Games signed King's Abbey. And I was like, well, King's Abbey is actually a great worker placement game, but it's like going into the deep end of the pool, right? The gamers who were coming and playing a 20-minute party game were not ready for a 3-hour King's Abbey game.
Yeah, not
So
many people are going from apples to feudum.
right, exactly. So my mission at Breaking Games was to start the strategy division, and the way that I thought to do that was to start small and then build back up to King's Abbey. So I signed Rise of Tribes from my friend Brad Brooks, and it's very gateway in the sense that I feel like you can get in. It's got an accessible theme with the civilization. We signed Expansity, which is another accessible theme, which is city building, and it feels like Carcassonne. We did Trellis, which is another accessible one, which is it's flowers and you're doing a very small tile laying game. We did Asking for Troubles, which is another accessible one, uh, which is great worker placement, and it plays up to 7, and it's light and good for family. I did not expect to put Dwellings in so soon because I was in fact building. I was going to go mediums after that, right? But the opportunity presented itself. Luke said, I have it. And I had Sherry saying to me, whatever you want to make. We had just started our Kickstarter division. We had done Rise of Tribes, and she was open. She said, if you believe in it, I mean, and it was my baby, so I did believe in it. And I thought, this doesn't work for Breaking Games, but it works for Kickstarter. And
Mm.
because we were just on Kickstarter, I didn't have to worry about if it fit Walmart or any of the other Breaking Games avenues. I just had to worry about, does this fit Kickstarter? And it did perfectly, right? It was a good match. So I said, all right, let's do it. Let's go. We're ready.
That's quite the thing. She said, just whatever you got, bring it." That speaks to a very high level of trust that she
Yeah.
must have, because it's not, Breaking Games is not small fry business. I mean, that's a lot going on, and just like, something like Dwellings, which everyone can see, it's a huge box like this. It's not a
Yeah.
60 card small thing that, okay, well, this didn't go well, that's okay. I mean, it's a big deal, and that's really cool.
There was a pitch. I had to so I pitched it to her. She's like, sure. Then I had to tell her the art budget and the trays budget. And there was a moment where she was nervous, right? This is a big deal. She came out to LA and played the game. And to her credit, who plays all the games that Breaking Games is going to do, even though it's not her type of game, she was able to get into it and understand it and say, you know what, this is good. I actually see that this is good. Um, Still did not let me live down that budget though for a while. That was a risky thing to do that.
Yeah, and did you let her win when she came out to play?
Oh, of course not. No way. I don't let people win. Dwellings also, you can't. Your first game is like a learning curve where you're like, whoa, what the heck does this thing do? And that's one of my favorite parts about it is seeing playtesters play it one time, be kind of baffled at what happened to them, and then think about it all night and come back and say, I want to play that again. That's great.
I brought up all of that to establish that there is this trajectory in your gaming career from small, just at the poker table, someone saying, "Yeah, I dare you," to being a pretty high up muckety muck at a pretty big company. And then you make what many would say the baffling decision
Yeah.
to start a brand new publishing company called Cardboard Alchemy. And what what I want to go, let me take it back. What gave you the courage to do that? Because board games, like restaurants, are not a high margin business. It is hard to make a living in this.
Yeah. Wow, it really is, and I'm gonna tell you this right now. In 2021, I'm either going to be living out of my car. This may not work. To be honest with you, I don't know. It was during a pandemic that I decided to do this. It was at a crossroads. There was I had a heart to heart talk with Sherry in 2019 uh, at PAX East, and I said I really feel strongly that although I love breaking games, the branding of a party game called Poop and Dwellings of Eldervale is like I can't deal with that, and I'm trying my best.
But
We have
think of the
Twitter accounts.
crossovers.
Yeah, the Poop faction. It's great. We had Twitter accounts trying to appeal to both customers. We had Black Friday sales trying to appeal to both customers, and I told her that, and I think she saw it, but their mass market game is huge. So you know who's going to lose in that is the strategy division, and sadly, the strategy division was looking on the chopping block. And I said I would like to start a new brand, and I would like to do a Kickstarter division, and we did not see eye to eye on that. I think that's fair, but I knew Dwellings of Eldervale was going to be my last one, and as sad as that is, I said, you know what? I These are the games I like to play though, and my Cardboard Alchemy is a game started with my good friend Brad Brooks, who designed Letter Tycoon, who designed Rise of Tribes, has tons of ideas in his head, and he likes to play those games. We've been long friends since we worked at Disney. We've programmed together. Brad and I go way back, and those are the kind of games we like. I like Dwellings. That's the kind of game I want to make. I don't want to make the other ones, and I have no problem with. I think Breaking Games is going to do fantastic in Walmart, and that's awesome. But I don't want. I want to focus on Kickstarter awesomeness, right? That's what I love. So with that in mind, I sort of well, our first Kickstarter was actually not a game, but we launched it right after I left Breaking Games to try and start the ball rolling and see if we could make this a thing.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I have never seen a company. Now, I've seen designers and companies launch not the game they want to make. They will launch a smaller, easy
Yeah,
to fulfill, very low goal game, a 60 card game or something, so they can
right,
have that. No, look, we have fulfilled something. You can trust us, even though we are not, come on with a
right.
million titles behind us. And so, but what you guys did was, and I remember when it showed up, and I said, "Oh, Cardboard Alchemy. Oh, I like alchemy. Cool." And I looked at it, and I said, "Well, where's the game? There's no game."
That's okay.
But it did. You jerk! You got me. It did get me because I got a bunch of these little com- component trays, and you
Yeah,
were marketing component trays and coasters. Is there
That's
was
right.
that that's all right?
That's it. That's
Yeah,
the
and it
thing.
was purely for. It was very clear. It was we want to start a new company. We need some capital to start a new company. So here's some great deals for you. Give us some money, which I believe was the pitch. I believe.
Sorta. Kickstarter was very angry at us for that I mean, they weren't angry, but they were like, "Listen, you cannot use Kickstarter to start a company." It's like, "Okay." They're like, "You have to be making something." And so we said, "All right, we're gonna make." The reason why we picked coasters. This was Brad's idea, which I liked a lot. I told Brad that community is big for me, and he's like, "Well, what better way to build community and show that we're all about amazing art by doing something that features art?" So coasters was an easy way to feature art. We asked our friend Sergio Chavez, who did Rise of Tribes, and he did art and dwellings. He did all the air factions, he did the boards, all the tiles. So Sergio is amazing, and we wanted to show that we stand for art all the time. Like that's one of our tenets of sort of the company is we're big into art. We also want to show the production quality. So that's when I came up with the idea of I love game trays. And I had worked with game trays on dwellings, good friends now with game trays. And I felt like and Noah Edelman said, I will partner with you on all your projects. And I thought, well, what about the first one? He had started making something called X trays, which are the trays you just showed. And it was a challenging thing because Kickstarter also came to us and said, X-rays are a thing already, that you're not making anything. I was like, what about coasters? But that didn't count apparently. So we had to so I was like,
I have in my head a guy at Kickstarter with like a top hat and a big mustache twirling and saying, "We know what you're doing. You
that's
can't
right.
fool us."
I mean, like, there's so many other Kickstarters doing bizarre things. I didn't think we were going to get flagged, but I will tell you a funny story. I've never told this to anyone, but in the middle of the campaign, so Kickstarter had approved us. We were fine. We were launched. We were going. We were halfway through this coaster and Trey's campaign, and Kickstarter came to us and said, "We've reviewed your campaign, and we are going to shut you down in 48 hours unless you produce a new tray color to prove that you are doing something new." I was freaking out, and I went to Noah and I said, "Look, I got to make a new tray color." And to his credit, that's a huge. There's no way we were going to have enough backers to to make a new color run viable. So Game Trace said, "I'll tell you what, I will make a new color, and you can have the first batch of that color," which was huge, huge. I cannot thank Game Trace enough. Saved our butts on that campaign.
And which color is that? Is that the orange?
That is the red.
The
That
red.
is the deep burgundy red. It was actually supposed to be like a lighter red, but backers are Kickstarter backers are an amusing group sometimes. And we made a picture. We didn't know what the red was going to. We had to come up with it in 48 hours. So we just slapped a color red on there and said, "Hey, guess what? We're making a red." But it didn't come out that color. So anyone who got the trays and thought, "Oh, I didn't want blood red. I wanted candy apple red." So I'm sorry about that. They are still awesome. They're just good for a horror game instead of
Yeah. Well, it's
yeah.
fine because had I known that, I absolutely would have gotten the red.
Well, we can hook you up with some red.
Had I known that deep story, that the deep pain, well, it's red because it's representing the pain when you got
That's
that
right.
that email.
But the campaign was largely we were upfront about it. The whole point was I had just left Breaking Games, so I know very well that you can't launch a game without marketing, and you need to make the prototypes and you need to send out the prototypes. And so we were months away from properly launching a game, but we wanted to immediately say hello, like introduce ourselves, say what we stood for, get people started with build our mailing list and talk to people and it, that was fun. And then we launched we've launched two campaigns last year in the middle of 2020. I feel pretty good about that. Was a good start.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm glad that you brought up the saying hello because I preview a lot of games, and a lot of games from designers who are new or smaller, and a lot of times they are good games. I enjoy them, but they don't do well on Kickstarter, and it's always the same reason: is that people don't know. They don't know you
Right.
exist. They don't have the word out, and it's always so hard. And it's hard to do that because if you're just going through Facebook marketing, that money adds up. buying a
Oh
Board
yeah,
Game Geek banner ad that's expensive. It's hard.
100%.
But the fact that you managed to turn it into a way to do it, say hello, prove to the world that yes, you can fulfill a Kickstarter and make some money at the same time is really impressive. I'll be curious if there are copycats down the road, because very 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 clever. But let's talk. Oh, and also you mentioned the prototypes. I don't think the average gamer realizes just how expensive a prototype is because so Mission Catastrophe here is the final copy, the retail, the price of the base game was $50. Is that right?
Yeah,
For
it's like
the
54 for the base game. Yeah.
$54. Now, that, which means that significantly less than $54 how much it can cost you to print one of those copies in your print run. But I'm guessing this was what, $100?
I can tell you, it's $150 for that prototype.
Yeah. And for the people watching, there's not everything's not in here. There's no insert in here. There is no
No.
minis in here. There's no solo mode in here. There's no like none of that's in there. And it's really expensive to do this. And so I just wanted to get that out there so people can have an idea. Like it's crazy when you're printing one of something.
Yeah, the economy scale is a real thing. That's why the manufacturing still happens in China, where you can get 1,000 made for, my first game was What the Food, right? And I think it went for $25, and to make one copy at the Game Crafter was 40. So it's this thing where, and Dwellings, I don't even want to talk the Dwellings prototypes. Oh my god. To
Well,
make
I didn't
one
ask.
mini.
I didn't want you to faint.
No, no, one mini. So some of the reviewers were like, "Oh, can I get a mini?" To make one mini was sometimes $100.
Wow.
It's like because we're trying to, but you can't sell it without, like, I wanted to make sure Man versus Meeple had a mini, and so I wanted to make sure everyone had at least one mini to go like, oh, look what's going to be in here, 50 millimeter thing. It was killing me that I had to send Mission Catastrophe ones out without minis, but I couldn't possibly throw those in there, so I had to say this will be cooler than this. you know
So let's talk a little bit about Mission Catastrophe because that's your first well, your first baby. And for the people who don't know, it is well, it's hard to describe because there are a lot of different modes in the game. But the main mode, I would argue, is the co-opetition version where you're all working together, trying to keep your ship from blowing up. But at the end of the day, there's only one working escape pod, and you don't like those suckers anyway. So you're going to get out of there and leave them all to their grisly fate. Is the main mode. But what is beyond that? Well, what is Mission Catastrophe? How did you pick that one? Because I'm sure you had a lot of people would have pitched you a game as the guy from Breaking Games. Why this one? What's the vision for it? And how did that Kickstarter go?
Sure. Mission Catastrophe is a design by Matt Walters, and it is not, I will admit, not Brad and my opening game plan. We were going to launch with one of Brad's games first, which you will see down the road. But because of the pandemic and because Brad has a heavier game, testing that heavier game was a challenge. And Brad recalled this really tight. So Mission Catastrophe is a little bit. It's a the ship is doomed. Everyone's got to run and get four things: get to a working escape pod, get off the ship. The core feels a little bit like Pandemic and a little bit like Machikoro in the sense that it's got dice probability. So the engine room is a 7. You don't want to be standing in the engine room if you roll 2 dice every turn, and that's where the asteroid hits. Matt had come up with a very simple game, but the core was so good. I played it. Brad played it one time and was sold. I played it and was sold. I said, Matt, this is your first game. Like it was. I played a lot of games over my time at Breaking Games. I probably seen hundreds of sell sheets, and then seen tons of video and played gazillions of prototypes. But when you play one and you think this is pretty baked out of the oven, I mean, that's a gem right there. So that was Mission Catastrophe to me. We said to ourselves, the other thing about it that we really liked was it's easy to see how you could take that on Kickstarter and take that to new places, right? New modules and new abilities and new new characters and new modes, and just so I love games that have that possibility. I don't like it when you look at it and you're like, I can't think of anything to stretch. When a game has stretch potential, that lights me up. I'm thinking about all the Kickstarter doodads and bells and whistles and ways I could bloat the thing probably to its detriment maybe. But I love doing that to games so that, this one had the juice. It had the core juice and it had the expansion juice to me.
And so when you first got it, was it just the semi co-op way, or did he already have in his mind the team mode and the solo mode, or was that something that you said, you know what, you're reading the room, and because semi co-op is a hard pitch, a lot of people do not
Oh
like
yeah.
semi co-op. So
That was probably the hardest part about that game was Matt's slogan was work together to save yourself. Now, I tried that slogan out a couple times over the summer after we finished our first Kickstarter. I was sort of like telling people about the game. That slogan turned people off. They were like, I'm sorry, I'm out. And I was like, no, 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 it's fun. It's fun. I had to keep saying, like, no, 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 it's not like what you're thinking. What you're thinking is a semi co op that you hate. But this is not that, right? This is this. To Matt's credit, he actually had already come up with co op mode, the true, like the completely cooperative mode. He had not done solo plays, but we had heard a lot of people over the summer say, if it doesn't have solo play, I'm not in. So we were like, okay, let's make sure that solo plays there, cooperative plays there, semi-cooperative plays there. And then Brad actually, Matt had a team mode, but he wasn't completely solid on it. And Brad said, I love the idea of a team mode. So we put it all in there. Not advisable per se. Some people will so turnoffs include semi co-op. Other turnoffs include more than one game mode. People go, I'm sorry, I don't know what this is. Like, how could you, if there's more than one game mode, that means there's only one good mode and you haven't told me what it is. But actually this game, this is one of the few games I would have done it to, because it works no matter which way you take it. The core is there. See, that's the thing.
yeah, I think the thing that well, I mean, what sold me on wanting to look at it was the art. I was like, "Ooh, that's pretty," but which I guess is good because that's part of your
Right.
game plan now. But what really sold me on this as being a game that has something is myself, my brother, my friend Matt, and then I guess you, Brad, and maybe also Matt. I can't remember, but I think it was
Yeah.
six of us played this on tabletop simulator. And when we finished, I always talk with Matt, and we actually talk each other out of backing Kickstarters all the time. It's our jobs. Like one
There
of
you
us
go.
will back it, and then we get a
Yeah.
text like, "Really? That's what you're gonna do?" Because you get the reminders or the your friend just backed this game.
Yeah.
So we tried. We're very critical, and we finished, and he does not like semi co-op. Does not like it, and he sent me a text. He said, "Well, that was a good game. I would back that game. That's semi co-op done right." And I said, yeah, I had because I don't really like semi co-op much either. It can always lead to hurt feelings,
Yeah.
um, in a way. But what I left with it was it didn't feel like a semi co-op. It always felt like a competition to me. Like, yeah, we're going to keep ourselves alive, but there was never any doubt in my mind that all of you would not space me in a second. And I was looking for
Right.
an opportunity to do it to you. And for me, I think that's what makes it work is because I mean, I'm sure some people, I don't foresee the bad feelings that you can get with a long, in-depth semi-co-op. I think of a game like Nemesis or something like that, where you're going to be sitting there for 2 or 3 hours, and then if you stab me in the back and ruin me at
Yeah.
2 hours and 45 minutes into the game, I'm going to slash your tires. And I don't. Something about this game doesn't have that, which is what was exciting to me, and I assume exciting to you as well. I don't know.
I think that's fair. I think some people have called it Nemesis Light, which I think is fun. I think the other thing about it, some people have said, well, it's also got some take that, but it's really quick. It's 30 minutes, so you're not gonna feel like my whole plan was ruined by your card, right? It is light, fast, zippy, and so the semi-comp factor is like you're on your own team. It's about how much can you not do to help anyone? You sort of are you're already sure that you don't want to help other people. There's a lot of times where it's like 1, 2, 3, not it as far as fixing the engine. You're like, okay, I don't want to do it, and I don't want to be. But then it gets back to your turn and no one's fixed it, and you're like, am I going to fix it? Can I fix it and get out? If I can't fix it and get out, maybe I'll find something else to do instead of fix it. So it's this weird, funny thing where you have to stall, or you have to come up with a couple creative plays in your pocket, which is very fun. I'm glad it worked out because on Tabletop Simulator, it's even longer than it is um, in practice on the table. But that's all we got right now, so I'm glad it worked for
Uh,
people.
Sorry about that, everybody. My microphone just died, so if my audio is a little weird, that is why. So you also mentioned the core game, and then there's an expansion, just because there's a few weeks left where people can still back this game before that pledge manager is going to close. Maybe a few weeks. I might be being generous with a few weeks.
For people watching you, we will let them in on the ship. Otherwise, we've pretty much shut the thing down. But I will say, like, we'll get a couple more people on board if they're interested
So
watching it.
what is this expansion? What does that offer versus what does the core game offer? Before I pump you on what's coming next.
Sure. The expansion to me is like a no-brainer ad because to me it like doubles the game for half the price. What it does is we made the ship modular. So the ship is composed of tiles. Those tiles have another modularity in that you can sub out the numbers. So instead of the engine room being a 7, you can actually take the 7 off and put a 5 on it. So what we added was we added hallways, we added a weapons room, we added med bay, we added rooms that don't do anything to help you. We added chompers like Galaxy Quest. We added an observatory where you like forget what you're doing and get lost. We added an artifact room. So all those are coming in. Not to mention that we had so we have 6 characters in the base game. We added 2 characters, but since we took the abilities of the characters and put them on roll cards, like being the captain and being the botanist and being the engineer, we added another 36 player abilities in the expansion. So that's 36 on top of 36. There's 72 abilities. And there's more cards and more ways to completely mess up. On the Kickstarter, we unlock things like emergency meeting, which is a very Among Us type thing to unlock. We did all that kind of stuff, promos and other things. So the expansion comes with a ton of content in it.
So everybody, there will be a link down in the description of this video. So if you are now sold on this, just click on that, and you will be able to jump in on the late pledges. Though do it quick because it's not going to stay open forever. Now,
I highly recommend watching the Hungry Gamer coverage
it's
of the game.
brilliant. I mean, that had to be worth at least 2 backers right there, at
Right,
least.
absolutely.
Yeah. But what is coming next? What can you tell us, and why won't you tell us more?
That is a very good question, and if I was truly ready, I would have the like the image would come up now of our next game because we are launching another one in this year. Where our plan is to do 2 a year. We did the coaster campaign to sort of indicate what kind of games we like. We like sci-fi, we like fantasy, we like horror, Cthulhu type stuff. So we like a lot of your awesome Kickstarter themes.
So not a lot of cube pushing games.
I mean, you
Fantasy
know,
cube pushing, right?
I'm a big fan of the. Luke used to call it transatlantic. It's not Euro, but it's like it's middle. So I definitely have to have theme in my games. I'm one of those. I'm an Omni gamer, but I love theme. So Brad's got one that I can only tease it a little bit. It's like Rise of Tribes. It has dice pushing, but it is taking Rise of Tribes and putting it in a Mad Max post-apocalyptic world where you have sort of we're thinking a little bit like Scythe, where you pick 2 different characteristics and mash them together, and then you're playing with this. It's like Civilization again, except Civilization has gone deep underground. There's now emerging as sort of new Civ, right? And that's an exciting game. We're working with Luke Laurie on a Dwellings of Eldervale inspired thing. I can't talk about that yet much. And we're working on another game with dragons, which an engine builder. I just a couple of good ones.
And
I want. I actually also Sorry, really quickly, some people ask me if we're gonna do another co-op. I have another I have I wanna do a storytelling. I'm gonna crack, like, interactive storytelling in games. I have a Hansel and Gretel type, tile laying games. So there's a bunch of really fun ones.
And is the next one potentially the Mad Max Brad's game, or can't even tell us that?
We're juggling a little bit right now. What I can tell everyone is that certainly if you've ended up following along with Cardboard Alchemy, we do give like cool deals and sneak peeks to everyone on our mailing list. What we're going to do this summer is we are going to reveal. Well, we're going to earlier than this summer. We're going to reveal which the first one is, but then we're going to do big sneak peeks of all like the loot game and all that stuff. I thought about a lot about it. I really like what Jamie Stegmaier does in sort of telling people a year before Charterstone, like, hey, this is coming. You should look at this. And I thought I talked to Sergio about creating some really cool VizDev pieces that will sort of show what we're looking at, so everyone gets a taste of a couple of them.
All right.
So
And so before I let you go, the last question, I'm throwing this one at you cold.
yeah,
You cannot pick any game you've ever worked on, and
yeah,
I'm even going to go further, and no Luke Laurie games or Brad games.
okay, it's fair.
One game. You got it can be as long or as short as you want. You got all the players that you want.
Yep,
What are you playing?
I know my answer to this one.
Yeah,
I'm gonna. Can I do an honorable mention though too?
absolutely.
All right, because these are two very different games, but I think that's going to be a fun answer. My honorable mention is Who Goes There. I don't know if you've played that one from Certifiable Studios. It's like The Thing, um, uh, but it is the best version of this. Now, of course, people who don't like Summit Co-op, this thing is you're all on the side of good, and you're in this middle of nowhere. You're in the middle of a cabin in the Antarctic or whatever, and one of you goes bad in the middle of that game, and it is amazing. They nailed that game. If it's about 4 hours, but it is there's the last hour is the most intense gaming you'll ever play when someone suddenly, because they have this mechanic where there's a person who is in charge of getting on the helicopter at the end. If that person is getting on the helicopter and you go one by one and say, all right, I'm going to invite Will on the helicopter. Now you can refuse because you think I'm corrupted and you think I'm bad. And if everybody refuses, then there's a new captain, and they start the helicopter, and there's this whole drama about like there was this one game where no one took me and I was good, but the bad guy had convinced them that I was all bad, and we argued and we had this hashed it out, and I was like, I told you you should have picked me. It's amazing. It's like for a social game, that's my top pick. Now, my top pick is not that one because I played. I want to make sure I get the name right. City of the Big Shoulders. That's the best game I mean, it's on my. I'm a big fan, longtime fan of Acquire. Acquire's a little dry. I grant it. So economic stock trading games are not like heavy on theme, but this one, maybe it's because I'm from Chicago. Maybe it's because it's so deep into it. But what happens is you were playing a company in the early days of Chicago. So you could play Schwinn Bicycles or Oscar Mayer Wiener Hot Dogs. And all of the companies, you're starting a company, you become the director, you get shares, you buy other people's companies, you get shares. It is a worker placement. They call it an 18xx game, which I'm not a big player of, but this one is 18xx and it doesn't have trains. It's more just the time period, the economics, and whatever. But here's the thing, I love variable player powers. I think it is amazing that every single company is different. So if you play Schwinn Bicycles, there's this whole thing where it says, back of the card says, oh, a couple years in, they actually merged with another bicycle company. That's so like all of a sudden you're playing and you have they've framed it so that you have it reflects that same thing. So if you get Oscar Mayer hot dogs, you have a lot of salespeople. They're on the corners, they're hawking the hot dogs, and they have a different sales force than say like a Florsheim shoe company. So every single company plays different. The game is extremely deep and satisfying. It's a Kickstarter gem. I was very lucky to I didn't back it, but I played someone's copy and I we played 6 hours. I got my butt handed to me, and I wanted to play again immediately. I was like, "This game is fantastic." So let's go get breakfast and then let's play again because
That sounds like you played all night
we
and then
did.
got breakfast and played again. Is that accurate?
Oh my god, yes. We totally we that game is so good. I met the designer. He's a really sharp designer, and I really think that game shows it. It's fantastic.
Right. Well, so thank you for taking the time to chat. Everybody else, get down into the description. Go check out Mission Catastrophe. If you are any kind of gamer, there is a mode there for you.
It's true.
So check it out. It's also available on Tabletop Simulator if you want to try it out. That is public for everybody, right?
We are about to make it public,
Okay.
so we'll have the ability to play that all summer while we're waiting and we're putting it, making it happen.
All right. So there you have it, folks. And drop down in the comments any questions you have. We will get those answered. Again, check out Cardboard Alchemy. Get yourself on their mailing list for the sneak previews. And Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you.